Left-wing propaganda is not only poisoning the entertainment industry now, it's ruining the classics. Stormy Daniels is continuing to con America, and the Nunes Memo is set to be released in less than 24 hours. We'll tell you why that doesn't matter, not one bit. On this episode of the Propaganda Report, I'm here with Monica Perez. Monica, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Binkley?
I'm good. Did you catch the State of the Union address? What are your thoughts on it?
I had to listen to it at 2 times speed because it was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
It just was like too slow. And even at 2 times speed, it feels like kind of slow.
It's really slow.
I don't know, but I walked past the TV just now and Jake Tapper, there was a headline. He was talking, the sound was off, and the thing said, Trump makes false claim that State of the Union address highest rated ever. And Tapper was actually talking to someone about it. Like that was the topic.
He had an expert in State of the Union address ratings.
Yes. And he was talking to someone, exactly. And all this fact checking stuff. I mean, it's so petty. Yeah. Why not check everybody's facts? Why don't we check your facts? Why don't you offer non-anonymous sources for your alleged facts?
Something interesting about the fact checking. I made a video about this. They were testing this new fact checking app, which is essentially funded by Hillary Clinton donors, George Soros, and a bunch of left-wing billionaires. And they were working with the Washington Post. They were working with PolitiFact. The guy who started PolitiFact is the guy
Washington Post, the seed of Operation Mockingbird.
Absolutely. I tested the app, and every 5 seconds I'm getting an alert. And it's just people's opinions is all it is.
Oh, you're kidding.
It's conjecture. There's a couple things that like the African-American unemployment, they would just present the left's framing of that issue. You know what I mean? Right. So they weren't really fact-checking per se. And then the rest of it was just kind of petty conjecture. But it was really overwhelming because if you're trying to like keep up with these fact checks you're getting every 2 seconds, you can hardly watch the speech and listen to it.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
It was like them making noise.
What they're doing is a lot of times people don't know the other side's argument. They'll hear something, and it's funny because Rand Paul was on Colbert's show last night, and Rand Paul said some things very eloquently, and he got a rousing round of applause, and the crowd had no idea that they were clapping for something that was a Republican position. Colbert would kind of like stop them.
Yeah.
And try to bring it back. So to prevent people from like hearing something in a speech and going, oh, I agree with that. These fact checking apps can prevent that from happening by sending alerts to people's phones in real time that tells them why what they just heard on television is wrong or racist and what they should believe instead. And then just give them an exact verbatim way to respond. They program them.
And that's how people can have such different impressions of the speech.
Exactly. One other thing about fact-checking is you'll notice that a handful of fact-checkers get cited all the time. In fact, I heard people during the Women's March, they were asked, like, do you believe such and such claim is true? And the response from the people marching was, what does Snopes say? And I've heard CNN say, you know it's true. Even Snopes confirmed it. So these fact checkers are becoming the highest authority, right?
Now, Snopes is just there to debunk real conspiracy theory.
Right.
That's what it's there for, to take really hard to debunk conspiracy evidence and make stuff up or stitch together a narrative that ignores the crucial evidence, etc.
Right. And there's only a handful of these fact checkers that Facebook, that all these other organizations consider credible or legitimate, right? Like certified fact checkers.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And this certification process, there's actually a certification process. We can apply for it if we wanted to. I'm sure we'd get rejected. Is through the International Fact Checking Network, which was,
oh my gosh,
which is funded by George Soros.
International Fact Checking Network. That sounds. I don't normally use the word communist, but that really sounds straight.
They had a World Fact Checking Fair this year or last year.
A fair?
Yeah, everybody around the world, fact checkers all around the world got together to figure out how to push propaganda. But the standards for certification were just created in 2017. And you can look at the list of certified fact checkers on their website. And among them are BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed, that released the Trump dossier, is a certified fact checker.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
BuzzFeed.
That's hilarious.
The Washington Post, PolitiFact. Only the liberal.
Washington Post, literally, it seems to me they are intentionally publishing things that are not true. It doesn't even matter if it's true or not true. If we say it's true, that's the world you're living in, and you need to acknowledge that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like economics. They tell you the way the world is, then they do stuff, and then they tell you it worked out just the way they wanted or whatever. They just want to tell you reality, and even when it's not true, they say it doesn't matter if it's true or not. This is the accepted paradigm, and if you don't embrace that, you're outside the fold, and that means you're wrong.
That's a perfect transition point. The Nunes Memo is set to be released in 24 hours. This has been a big buildup. The Democrats have gotten ahead of this.
What is it? Tell me what it is.
It's a memo that Nunes wrote that Republicans believe will discredit the Russia investigation because it will show that the Trump dossier was used in the FISA court application to get a FISA warrant. So they're hoping that it will show that the FISA warrant was given on the basis of information that was not validated and was paid for by Trump's opposition.
Of course, nobody's going to care because if it's just like when we said the leaked Hillary emails were leaked by Russians and everyone said, yes, so what if the information was true? And this happened. I think it was a distraction because it happened on the day that Trump signed an expansion of FISA powers for 6 years. And did not put the USA Rights Act, a bipartisan addendum to that to protect Americans' rights from warrantless surveillance. He didn't include that. That didn't pass. And this is an abuse of FISA, and it's all smoke and mirrors because FISA is getting more powerful, and the House, the Senate, the White House, Democrats and Republicans are all abetting this gutting of the Bill of Rights. And this is why this stuff is in the news night and day. All this nonsense, superficial crap is so we don't notice that they're all on the same side, slowly, quickly, at this point, dismantling the Bill of Rights.
That's one angle, yes.
I just had to get that in. I needed to add a little substance because I just snapped on CNN.com, Fox. It's all of it is just gossip. I would make my daughter get off the phone if she was talking about that.
Absolutely. Stuff. That's why CNN's getting better ratings than it ever has before since Trump has been in office.
Because it's just gossip.
We're a nation of high schoolers at this point.
Yeah, this is what somebody told me 4 years ago, whatever, when I was on the air, and Obama and Romney, I guess, were running against each other, and I preferred Romney, obviously. And although, I mean, I shouldn't say obvious, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. There were more debt, more wars, no matter what, it doesn't matter. But whatever. And someone said to me, you want, for your career, it's going to be better for you if Obama wins. Because you'll be able to, you'll never have an end to what you can talk about in criticizing everything. And that's how it is. So people are like, oh, CNN didn't want Trump to win. They did everything they could. Really? This was totally foreseeable. It's a common knowledge in media that you're better off if you're in media, you're better off opposing the person who is in office.
Well, it's the same thing as problems that exist in society. If all of society's problems were solved, then there would be no need for politicians. So it's against politicians' interest to solve people's problems.
Yeah, that's true. And that's where this darn, they're fomenting racism and hatred and divisiveness and all that stuff. And it really bums me out because they're doing it. It has a real impact on people. It screws up kids and how they think about the world and interact with each other. And it's just selfish and
right. And based on those things, that's where people stand on the issues. They stand on the side that they identify with. And like you were talking about a second ago, the truth, the reality of it doesn't matter at all. So this memo could be released and it could have hard evidence. It could just be indisputable, but it will not matter. It is not going to change which side people stand on this issue. So all it's going to do is continue to further the divide, continue to make people stand their ground even stronger. I was watching The X-Files, which dedicated an entire episode to completely selling out the whole franchise. They just undermined everything the franchise was about in this episode, which I'll go into that more in a second. But there is a pretty insightful moment in that episode where Mulder is talking to an evil doctor named Dr. They, who has helped shape society because he can control or he can manipulate people's collective memory, and he can memory hole stuff and make them forget things and change the past and therefore control the future. This is about 3 clips of their conversation together, and this is why the Nunes Memo is not good. It doesn't matter what's in it. People are going to still believe what they believe.
I have to admit, what little I know of you, I got from a rather dubious online video.
Oh, did you like that? I made it. It's my new platform, Phony Fake News. It's a presentation of real facts, but in a way that assures no one will believe any of it.
Okay, so what is or what was my time?
Well, it's a time when people of power thought that they could keep their secrets secret and were willing to do anything to keep it that way. Those days are past, gone. We're now living in a post-cover-up, post-conspiracy age. The point is, I can tell you all of this right out in the open because it doesn't matter who knows about it. They won't know whether to believe it or not.
To be honest, I'm not believing any of this.
Well, believe what you want to believe. That's what everybody does nowadays anyway. You're only proving my point, you twit.
Wow. That's pretty well put. It's totally true.
Yeah, it's very well put.
The report from Iron Mountain said that in the 60s. It said it doesn't matter if we publish this. It won't matter at all. They won't stop it. They won't know what to do about it. But the way he says it takes it another step where, yeah, it's just mass confusion. Cass Sunstein.
Right. Yes, very much Cass Sunstein. I like the part at the beginning, too, where he said, it's my new platform where I present real information in a way that is so unbelievable that nobody will believe
news,
it.
No one will believe.
Talk about revelation of the method sometimes. That's what that is. It's revelation of the method.
Well, it's something else. Revelation of the method is about consent. So by showing us the report from Iron Mountain and we not doing anything about it, we have consented to it and they have no moral problem. This guy is saying by putting it out there, people don't believe it.
Yeah, but you can still claim they consented. We told them, nobody believed it. People don't believe the report from Iron Mountain. Yeah, but not
believing it, I don't think necessarily is consent. Believing it, and like a lot of people think 9/11 was an inside job. And so what? You know what I mean? They didn't do anything about it. They tried, but as a democratic society, yeah, all right, I see it. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But that's really sad. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard for me to like figure it out. And I like even the Las Vegas thing, my husband came home from work. He does a lot of work with the people out there who run that venue. He's like, yeah, like some chick's brother and this one and that one. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I talked about it. Like, I think that they really kill people, but they talk about it as a hoax so that we don't care that much or whatever. But then over the months, I said to him, I was like, I'd really like to send flowers to those families. Can you get me some names? And nobody could seem to come up with the names, you know? So.
Wait, how? Like, did he try to get names?
I don't know. I feel like I asked his secretary. And I asked him. He definitely didn't know any names. I'm trying to think. Maybe he just didn't come up with names. But he was the one who was saying that I was wrong. You know what I mean? He was the one who was saying it was real. And I was like, and at first I accepted it because he was like, well, this chick who works there, I know her. She told me people who work there, blah, blah, blah. And so at first I kind of fell for that. And then when I went back, I was like, wait a second. You don't know anybody who, and I asked him to get me, I don't know if it went down the email from my wife hole.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah. Could have been. But I'm sure he doesn't have any names. That I'm sure. Because you can just imagine me being like, no, I want an answer. So he did. I would have gotten it out of him if he had it.
Yeah.
But my point is that I go around in circles about stuff like that sometimes, and I really try to stay out of the truth porn cycle. And because it's so addictive.
Yeah, it is. And that one in particular is very addictive, especially lately too. There's been more reports released which confirm that they were looking for other suspects, that maybe they still are looking for other suspects. So they were obviously lying. Now it's confirmed that they weren't being open, even though it's pretty obvious. When you watch those press
there's
conferences.
Not one thing they say at any time that I can believe, but I also can't not believe it. Some of them have to be true things. You know what I mean? Like some stuff, it's just what this guy said. Real news, no one will believe. I have no idea. Like my truth dar, all I know at this point, there's just a few things I know. I believe I believe that it is, we really do live in the Truman Show as far as like politics and media and elections, that it's just not real. This is what I was thinking. You know how Star Wars was, there's a famous thing that like Darth Vader never got any money at all because Star Wars, and the reason George Lucas got so rich is that he just made all the money on the merchandise. Right there.
No,
like
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was watching like 70s Christmas or something. And it's like, he was so prescient, like foreknowing that he was smart and he put a merchandising clause and that he got all the merchandise money. So even though he didn't make any money on the movie, he got fantastically wealthy on the merchandise. And I was like, okay, that wasn't him just getting lucky. His intention from the beginning was to get the movie green lighted and paid for, and he was going to take nothing because all it really was, all the franchise really ever was a toy commercial.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking, oh my gosh. Right. So you got to just look at the bigger picture there. Then I was thinking cable news is just an ad for the military, for war and debt.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And maybe police, but it's just all it is. So if you watch Forensic Files, you'll see it's just an ad for police. It's to get you to be happy you pay taxes. That's all it is. If you watch Forensic Files, which I like, a lot of people like, it's just when you look at it, it always ends with the ad for forensic science, the money, all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's like a Truman Show. I think the whole thing is completely made up. And so when like my mother says, you think everything's fake, I'm like, well, everything is fake. That's the nature of it. Like after Truman discovered that he was living in a dome, people didn't go up to him and say, but my house is real. You know what I mean? This is sleep in my bed. My bed is real. This is really my dog. It's like, no, it's all fake. It's all fake. It goes out the window. But the cleverness of how they take people like us who really spend the time to objectively understand the truth behind the agenda, because the events you're never going to really get the truth out of. You have to just try to figure out the agenda. Even that for me has been, I'll hit a wall sometimes, like Hillary losing. I thought for sure she was going to win. I didn't realize there was a paradigm shift, kind of like JFK assassination thing, like, wow, they're going bold this year. You know what I mean? And it's impossible for me to predict that stuff. And so what different, so it doesn't even matter if you understand you live in the Truman Show. If you can't find the dome, you can't get out, you still got to eat.
Well, let me ask you this. If we were to meet someone who sold guns and they're like, I'd love to tell people who listen to your show about my company, and we gave like a 15-second ad to this person who sells guns, and we happen to also talk about the Las Vegas shooting or something like that on that show, that would be similar to what you're saying, but that wouldn't mean that we did it for the purpose of that.
No, and actually, like, I know Clark Howard, for example, is on WSB. He tells people how to save money. He's probably the only radio host I've ever heard of who doesn't do sponsorships or commercials or whatever as a rule, because he doesn't want to be influenced or even to be perceived as being influenced.
Yeah.
And that's a reason why I've never been super gung-ho on ads. However, the way they used to do YouTube, now Google hired 10,000 censors so that YouTube, so the people who place the ads have to approve of the content. See, if you don't make that an option, you can't hold the ads responsible. And when you jumble up the ads so that simply being on YouTube, you get a stream of ads, when you disconnected it that way, you made it impossible for content to cater to ads.
Right.
So
Yeah.
The other way that like an ad is promoting the content. It's like, yeah, but it's more likely that the content is promoting the ad. In the real world, like that's how I was talking to that hip hop guy who told me hip hop concerts are a way for the guys putting on the show to make drug money. I mean, I don't know if that's true. It was like so shocking to me. I don't know if it's true, but he's a guy who travels with them. And he said they come in, they have an advance guard that comes in and distributes the drugs and makes tons of money. And these guys play their shows and they move on. I mean, that seems crazy to me, but that's what he said. And it just helped me to see things in a different light. But like, that's when I realized that the content is the ad much, much more than you think. And it's kind of interesting because the way to defeat, and that's very powerful. And I just this second, as we were talking, realized that the YouTube, there might be like even just a monetary reason they actually want ads and content to be responsible for each other, because then the ad can own the content, which is really what we're talking about with these censors. Maybe the government owns it, maybe Google owns it, but ultimately the ad owns it. And that makes the content untrustworthy, both from a political point of view and a consumer point of view.
Yeah, the ad only owns it if the content exists because of the ad. If
I'm saying that the content is going to cater to the, 5 years from now or whatever, because sometimes when you listen to the news or watch the news, they'll show you about this great new boba place. It's like, is that ad or is it not an ad? Like, what is really going on behind the scenes there? And I'm just saying, I could see the business model 5 years out.
There's a ton of that on corporate television. You're absolutely
It's just
right.
happening. And I would
when Megyn Kelly, before she went over to the NBC, she was doing all these interviews about her insights about Trump because of her fight. But the reality was it was all a big book tour. It was a big marketing campaign for her book. None of it was actually about like the details of what was going on. It was simply trying to tease people into going to buy her book and find out more. And they do that all the time with half the people they have on their shows, which it's a trade-off. With the Megyn Kelly thing, I remember it because it was so blatant. She wasn't giving any good information. She was giving empty. It was nothing. It was empty calories, and it was just so absurd. Sometimes people will go on, and the host will have to be like, "Tell them about your book. Tell them about your book." They almost have to pull it out of them because the person doesn't want to seem like they're marketing. They actually want to give out the content for real. So there is a lot of what you're saying that's going on. I think it just depends on the people and the networks involved.
But I personally, I couldn't. I mean, you asked me, would that be selling out or whatever? I mean, I don't know exactly what you were getting at, but it's hard enough for me to figure out what I actually think. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I could, I don't know. I just don't care about, I have no hope of ever actually making any serious money doing any of this. I do remember when they were asking me, one of the sales guys at WSB asked me, if I was, he found out I was a libertarian. He said, are you anti-bank? I said, well, I'm not anti, the Sun Trust, like where I put my money. Like, I'm anti, like, the bankers who run the world. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely am anti that, but I'm not anti, like, the guy who helps me order new checks. I mean, that's ridiculous. But he was worried because they sell bank ads.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't have any ads. I don't sell any specific ads for my show. It's just over whatever.
To me, it's disgusting what like Megyn Kelly and Fox were doing, and when they make it completely obvious and over the top. But when someone produces a good piece of content, like if someone writes a book or they make a movie or like a documentary, and it's genuinely has value to that audience, it's something that will help them, and it's something that they're interested in or something that will help them. Maybe it's some sort of
I think tutorial. Ads are good.
I think that's perfectly. I think the person who made it deserves to earn for it for the work they put in.
I like
so
commercials.
I see no problem with them marketing to
commercials. Tell me about stuff I want and need. But there was a famous case way back when where it was in Florida, and two reporters did a show on the hormones in milk, did a piece on the hormones in milk. And Fox, it was going to be, I think, just on a local Fox station, but Fox, like headquarters, Rupert Murdoch himself or something like that, got a call from Monsanto. I really think these are the actual facts. I don't have it in front of me, but they called the local station and spiked the story. So the reporters sued and won. And then it was overturned on appeal. And the reason it was overturned was the judge ruled that he didn't say this part, but it's just like when a gambler sued the NFL for a fixed game. The ruling was you're not entitled to a fair contest. You're entitled only to entertainment. Same thing for news. The news, there is no obligation to, in good faith, report the news as true, only to provide basically entertainment. So the reporters did not get their money. And then, adding insult to injury, I noticed that Reason Magazine wrote a smear piece on the journalists. Isn't that outrageous? But they were true. What they said about the hormones in the thing was true. And their story got spiked because the sponsor or whatever crony of their owner. And look, if Rupert Murdoch, if there's no licensing requirement from the government for airwaves, if in the 30s or whatever it was when they started, people used to just broadcast over the airwaves and that made them own the station. Just like if you started tilling field that was uninhabited, tilling in soil, that's how you own things. You squat and you own. That's how we do it. That's where property rights comes from. The government stepped in and said, we can't have that because then people will just broadcast whatever they want. Some of this stuff is outrageous. We need to control it. So it wasn't even chaos in the marketplace of like property rights. It was about controlling content from the beginning. So these guys get licenses from the government over content. But if they didn't, in a totally free society where that was not the case, Rupert Murdoch could say whatever he wants. He could I don't even believe there should be laws, truth, and advertising, because what that does is it protects advertising. It makes you believe it. It adds credibility to it. If there were no truth in advertising laws, you wouldn't believe advertising and it would have no power whatsoever. It wouldn't even exist, in my opinion, or it would get private seals of approval or whatever from trusted sources. So I don't object to a private person doing whatever he wants on his airwaves, but it's not like that. And there's this misrepresentation that it's true. They say it's true, or they imply that it's true.
Yeah, and to what you were saying right before that, part of this whole fact-checking push that they're doing is to do what we've been talking about and centralize the control of the information back to the mainstream media, is to get rid of all the other squatters, so to speak, and to rebuild. They even say this, all of this message is unified through all these nonprofit foundations. There's a lot of articles right now that I've discovered in the past week about how all these nonprofit philanthropists are getting into the game to fight against Trump. Like, I'm saying just getting into it, which is a lie. They've always been in it. But their unified message is we need to rebuild trust in the media and get rid of all these people putting out the false information. So it's exactly what you're just saying. And they're using these fact checkers as the ultimate authority to help them do that.
I was just was it in his speech? What was I reading that talked about trust in here it is. This was from Trump's speech. Quote, "For the last year, we have sought to restore the bonds of trust between our citizens and their government." And I have to say that no conservative, traditional conservative or libertarian, anybody familiar with the founding of this country thinks that trust between citizens and government is an American idea. The entire point of the Bill of Rights is that government cannot and should not be trusted.
Yeah.
And then later he says something about unmatched power. Unmatched power is tantamount to absolute power, which corrupts absolutely. And it was really, you could say, when we went from a bipolar to a unipolar world, America, deliberately or not, could not handle that responsibility and became a bully.
Unmatched power of what?
A military power. He said, it doesn't, you're going to get death and destruction if you're not super powerful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, this idea of trust, it was just like his election commission that I noted was about restoring faith in the elections, not restoring integrity. People need to understand the difference between a fact checker being PC popular opinion and a fact checker being here is the documentation. I mean, that's the problem here. And that has been, we've identified it for a long time.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link for that International Fact Checking Network because it really is interesting to go through. Once you see all their connected organizations, they're connected to what I talked about, I think, last week or the week before, the First Draft News Network. Yep. They're part of that same organization, which is also funded by George Soros and Bill Gates. That's who I left out. Bill Gates is also funding both of these projects. All right, I want to talk about how, everybody, entertainment is more left-leaning. That's not a surprise or a secret, but
right.
The propaganda that's coming out of the entertainment industry is you get slapped in the face. You can't even enjoy a movie anymore, hardly, without the movie making a declarative stand that they are against Trump, that everything about Trump or the right is racist. I mean, it's over the top. There was
right.
I didn't get a clip of this because you have to watch it to see it, but you ever seen those movies, The Purge?
I don't think so.
There's a Purge franchise where in every movie the premise is basically one day a year murder is legal. Get it out of the system. They purge people one day a year. There's a new one coming out, and in the new one, the trailer, it's like a 30-second trailer that's like a campaign commercial. And at the end of the trailer, there's a MAGA hat, as though this is Trump's America, where a purge is happening.
What?
Yeah, it was totally over the top. But I don't care about those movies. However, two other things that I watched this week that I am interested in, they're classics that I do care about, were also infected with liberal propaganda, over-the-top propaganda, and that's Star Trek Discovery and The X-Files. Star Trek Discovery, I was skeptical about from the beginning because I read some stuff that the showrunners said. The showrunners said that the Klingons in Star Trek Discovery are like Trump supporters. So I watched the first episode, and the Klingons were verbatim using dialogue from Hitler's book.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going, okay, so he's calling Trump supporters Nazis. But if I hadn't read that interview with the showrunners, then I wouldn't have noticed that. So I continued to watch, and it hasn't been that bad. It's exceeded my expectations. I was expecting it to be Star Trek, Social Justice Warrior, or Snowflake, or something like that. But it's actually been not great, but it's been decent. Last week, though, it really took a turn for the worse when it comes to delivering propaganda. And I'm just going to play the clip because this clip you can find in one of the trailers for this episode. I'm not going to give you the context because I don't want to give any spoilers to people who might watch the show. But the dialogue of this clip is all you need to hear to see where they're going with it. It's just so disappointing.
Can I tell you that when you said The Purge, what the premise was, it reminded me of Star Trek, the original series, the episode about Landru, where one day a year they go out and like rape women and kill each other and stuff.
That's what it is. That's what the whole movie is.
Yeah, that was a Star Trek idea. Right. And then he said Star Trek.
I remember that now that you say that. And I didn't put that together. All right, here's a clip.
Hello, Philippa. I've watched for years. You let alien races spill over the borders and flourish in our backyard. And have the gall to incite rebellion. Terrans need a leader who will preserve our way of life, our race. To all, I make this offer. Renounce Georgia. The empire is dying in her hands, but you don't have to. Not today. Michael Burnham is not to be touched. She is integral to our future plans, a future where we together will make the empire glorious again.
Yeah, exactly. Mega.
But they did that thing that's so weird is that this is a totally new thing. It seems to me this is an alt-right thing that emerged over the last few years where this identity thing, this immigration thing, this border thing, this white pride thing or whatever it is, it's like arbitrary. It's gratuitous. They're just saying, you spill into our borders and change our way of life. But real racists, let me say, I mean, there are real racists and there always have been. And some on both sides of the aisle, they have specific things to say about the race they do not like. I hate to say it, but my dad used to say that Italians were in the mafia, in New York. It was just like, you got to stay away from those guys. They kill people. Now, most Italians are not in the mafia. You know what I'm saying? But that was his perception growing up in New York. And it was, so when he told me to avoid those people, he was saying it, he added content. And so this guy, it's totally the alt-right Trump thing because it's the same kind of weird floating, you know what I mean? Is this in my imagination?
No.
Okay. Because I think that's what I'm hearing. It just feels like it's constructed the same way the Indivisible stuff that you were playing last week that it said like, just vote for what? Vote for the woman. Vote for the black guy. Vote for the illegal immigrant. Just
vote for the illegal. We should really point that out again. They told their supporters to vote for illegal immigrants.
I mean, how would you even know that the guy running was an illegal immigrant?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, is that on the tagline? Illegal and proud. Like, I don't even get what they're. But it's just empty. You know what I mean? It's just empty, gratuitous identity stuff.
Do you remember the one girl who talked about whether or not she's contributing to white supremacy by crossing the street at night when she sees a black person up the street?
That whole thing, like, I gotta say, this whole thing upsets me. I was just raised in suburban America over the past decades. We were, and tell me if you agree, taught really not to see race, not to talk about it, to get past it, like that. That was maybe part of our past, but it was impolite and uncool to think about people like that. Am I the only, did you have that experience, Binkley?
That it was impolite and uncool to think about people in terms of race? You
don't say, oh, a black guy just got hired. Like, you would never say that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the way I grew up, it was, that
would be rude, right?
Right.
So I feel like that's etiquette. And now the way, that's what you want. In my mind, that's what you want. You want to get past identity distinctions, privileges, and persecution so we can all attain what I think, universally proclaim is what we want, which are civil rights, human rights, equal rights, natural rights, whatever it is. We never talk about rights and act like some people have different rights from other people. Now, they say that women's rights, gay rights and stuff, but I think that is fundamentally wrong and will just set the pendulum swinging both ways.
Well, to that right there, one of the messages from Indivisible and the Women's March is women are going to finally get the rights that they deserve, as though they don't have.
The only thing they can identify, I asked my daughter about that because she claims to be a feminist, is equal pay. They are absolutely convinced there's a pay gap, which I think it's Thomas Sowell who has a good 3-minute YouTube video on how it is when you control for all the variables, there is no pay gap. And I will say in a free society, a pay gap could not persist because, as I've said before, we would open chick bank. We work harder for less, we all went to Harvard. We're all running this thing. You can trust us. But even beyond that, it's really not incumbent on a person who owns private property to have to hire people. You can pay whatever you want. It doesn't, in a really free society, competition will take care of the bigot. But my problem is that, so now you play that thing to me, or like what happened to us. We did a YouTube video a while ago, whatever, a podcast, and that the news of Harry, the royal, marrying this actress, who I think at the time was reported she was pregnant. I'm not sure that's true or not, and it was all over the news that this chick was mixed race, all over the news. I told you you hadn't heard it. Then we got a comment that it said, really, it makes me sad to even repeat it. I don't want to, but I'm going to.
It wasn't just you. She was saying that we both were.
All right. Well, she said, I am a Black female libertarian. I used to like your show, but now I know that you hate Black people because you said that Meghan Markle was mixed race and there was no reason to say that. Goodbye. Something like that.
All right.
But those
that was
words
a troll.
were true.
That was probably not a Black person
or
a woman.
Right. And I think it's a little weird that she's identifying herself as a Black woman and says that I hate Black people because I identified somebody. I thought it was relevant. I did think it was relevant to what we were talking about. But I don't want to even have this conversation right now with you. But what I want to say, I feel like I feel stuck because it's all over the news, right? So if we're going to address it, and it's in the news because the people in the pink hats, the people who say vote for someone based on their identity are coming at us, right? I mean, not us, but they're bringing it up. The people who say they are in defense of that, of racial equality and all that, are the ones who are bringing that conversation up. And if we're going to talk about it at all, then I get that comment to talk about it at all. And I'll tell you, when I go to, maybe I'm insensitive or don't use the right words, don't understand people. But when I go to my kids' Little League or church or school, there are, in those groups, every race is represented, every single race and mixed races. And I love seeing people love each other without regard to that stuff because we have shared values. We're in voluntary organizations. I love it. I like seeing people of different races interact harmoniously. It makes me happy. Maybe that makes me some kind of bleeding heart. I really don't know. And I recognize that there's racism and perceptionism, and it bums me out. I remember one time I said, I used to be an investment banker, and I had a conference call going, and I was calling another banker to get him on the phone, and I got a secretary. She didn't know there was a big conference call. She thought it was just me. I said, hi, this is Monica. Is Chuck available? And she said, whose office are you calling from? And I did not understand the question. I was like, whose office? My office. Whose office would I be calling from? And then somebody else on the phone chimed in and said, hey, Roz, she's a banker. Just, put her through. And I was like, what? So I realized later that they just thought I was a secretary because I was a female. That prompted the only Black guy in our, in the investment banking group, I was the only chick, to say, wow, I thought I had it bad because everyone thinks I'm the computer tech. It's like, but at least they think of me as some kind of professional. So I see that there is what Jamie Foxx calls perceptionism. Like one of the guys I worked for in banking was a total jerk, total unbelievable jerk. And he was sitting in first class and he made a stink and asked for his money back because he saw that the pilot was female. And he did that, and and they were, what a jerk he was. They would not, obviously not give his money back. But his perception, I guess, was that she was emotional or unintelligent just based on her gender. I don't know what was going through his head, but I know that there are prejudices and discrimination, everything. And I've been the victim of it. It's not insurmountable. It's not fun. I don't like it. It's definitely been a problem. And then the answer, if the answer is affirmative action, I had one guy say to me when I get into Harvard, well, the standards are a lot lower for chicks, right? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I think I would have gotten in anyway. I don't know. But you've got all these perceptions and counter perceptions and all that. And, it just bums me out that I don't know what I'm asking you, like, how are we supposed to, I feel like it's a setup. It's a trap. And it's like what they said to my son. One of his classmates said to him, are you a feminist? And he said, no. And the guy said, then you're a misogynist. He said, I'm not. I think he had to explain what that meant first. You hate women. And he said, I'm not. And the kid said, well, you're one or the other. You have to choose. And I felt bad. I think we talked about this last time. My son went back to him and said, I believe in chivalry. And so the kid accepted it, the other kid, even though that's like the worst thing you can say, right? Like, that was what Limit Women's Lib was all about. Don't hold the door for me, So, yeah. So they're not, the kids aren't sophisticated enough to have these high level conversations. But for me, like, it's a real problem. I don't like to offend people, so I don't want to talk about it. And
the fact is, people are offended looking at it, like, it doesn't matter. Like,
no, it doesn't, and I don't know what to do. Like, it bums me out because I don't want to talk about it. I don't care. I'll tell you, I find anonymous social media interactions with like-minded people to be highly satisfying relationships. I've absolutely no idea. Sometimes I do know, and it's just across the board. It's not like white women my age. You know what I mean? Like, there's probably not one white woman my age that I've gotten in the the expression.
The fact is, unless there's a picture of the person, you have no idea.
You don't know. And I'm the only one with a picture of, but I call that Twitter dippity, like serendipity, but Twitter dippity, where you just happen to find people who are like-minded. You stumble upon them. Retweeting the same stuff. Hashtags. Yeah. But this is for me something I'm super bummed about. I don't know how you can't know what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes ever. Nobody else's shoes, not your spouse, not your kids, absolutely nobody else's shoes. And the insecurities that we all have, especially as adolescents, are really exploited by this identity talk, where you can attribute every bad feeling, every piece of anxiety, everything to this force that you can't control. My husband was raised to think that he had ADHD. So in the beginning, he would, like, when we first got married, he'd be like, come to this party. I can't, I'm too socially awkward. It's painful for me. I was like, dude, everybody feels that way. You just have to bust through it. And he told me recently, so many years later, it's like, you were so right. Everybody feels that way. And I was just using that, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. So I was using it as a crutch, Yeah. But what it is it's paralyzing. To use this identity stuff, it's paralyzing to the person who thinks it's beyond their control, that it's up to other people to change their perceptions about your identity, what your identity means to them. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you think that the world is against you because of something you can't control, your gender, then you're totally disempowered, and you're waiting for the very people who are your enemy, your oppressor, to lighten up. I'm not saying that's not true, but it's just absolutely disempowering. Whereas for me, I was like, I might have an uphill battle here, but I need to have a clean towel. I grew up the youngest of 9. I needed to make some economic progress, and I did. But I didn't mean to like totally rant, but I don't know what, it's a no-win situation. I don't know how we can have intelligent conversations about this stuff.
It's not a no-win situation. I get what you're saying. That's the point of the propaganda, is to get people thinking in those identity terms. You're going to offend people. To not offend somebody, you'd have to get in a closet and stay there for the rest of your life. It's the only way, because simply by looking at people certain ways, some people, and it has nothing to do with race or gender, it's just the way that they grew up and the circumstances that they've been in throughout their life, have been conditioned to get offended by everything.
I took this Harvard bias test.
The implicit bias test.
Implicit, right. So it's not even, you don't have to be prejudiced. I just took it before the show. I took two of them. One was presidential preferences and one was skin tone preference.
Yeah.
I said I had a slight preference for Richard Nixon over Donald Trump. They claimed that it had no bearing on the outcome. And then for like 10 minutes, you click quickly left or right on pictures and words, whether they're good or bad, Donald Trump or Richard Nixon. Honestly, that's it. It's like good words, bad words, pictures of Trump, pictures of Nixon. And it came out that I had a slight preference for Richard Nixon. That was true. Then I did preference for light-skinned versus dark-skinned people. I said I had no preference, and it came out I had no preference. Now, of course, you're going to want to not demonstrate a preference, but this is supposed to be able to defeat your intentions and find your real heart.
Maybe they can send you a certificate that you can keep in your purse so that anytime someone accuses you of being biased, you can pull it out and say,
Maybe we can use that as like the thumbnail for our podcasts.
There you go.
So that chick can feel a little better about whatever. I don't think it was.
I mean, I think
it was a troll.
That chick was a troll. That was clearly a troll.
But there's just a lot of things that you know, I don't know. I really don't know what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes. I don't know what it's like to hear through somebody else's ears. I don't know what my words that not meant to hurt anybody, how they hurt people. Like I really feel like it really is a priority for me to be objective and truth telling. So when people say stuff about Catholics, like there is one thing that does get me down when they say the Catholics can sin all they want and then go to confession and be redeemed. No problem. So that's why they're so bad. We still have to go to purgatory for like 5,000 years. So that's not true. But there are prejudices like that, assumptions, drunken Irish, whatever, you know, that can be offensive. But, you know, it's not the end of the world. And actually, Max Kellerman, who's a total sellout, he's a boxing commentator. He said he knows people who are offended that Notre Dame's team is called the Fighting Irish. Could you? I can't even. If it was called the Drunken Irish, I'd be like, all right, that's a little much. You know, the Fighting Irish, is that supposed to imply that they're drunk and that's why they fight?
I guess so.
Anyway, so I don't take that stuff too seriously. Maybe it makes me not sensitive.
They're taking Chief Wahoo off of the Cleveland.
I know, that's what stimulated the whole conversation. And he said he knows. This is what he said. He said he's been given feathers by American Indians or Native Americans who appreciate his stance against Chief Wahoo.
Who is this?
Isn't that Max Kellerman? He's a boxing commentator. But I lost faith in him when he narrated the Triple G or called the Triple G Canelo fight as if it were legit when it was clearly fixed. So that was the end of Kellerman to me. But he said, so apparently, supposedly there was a poll taken of Native Americans and 90% of them do not care about sports symbols that portray them as Braves or Redskins or Chiefs or whatever. They don't care. But he says that they do care. And I do think it seems stereotypical that he would say he was given feathers by Native Americans, you know, like just keep that to yourself if you're so sensitive to stereotypes. But he's the one who said that Fighting Irish is offensive also. And I just, maybe because that like could not possibly offend me, it makes me less sensitive.
He's playing to the audience. He's doing the same thing that Star Trek did and the same thing that X-Files did. They think that their audience is made up of people who believe these things, so they've decided to align themselves with this belief.
And that's why that troll wrote in the comments, because he probably wants people to think, or us to think, that that's what the audience wants. But I agree. Why it didn't make sense that she.
Not that we think all trolls are he's. Women have an opportunity in the troll world as well. There's equality in the troll world.
There's just no connection between how a person identifies G-self and what what they actually are. I've seen it before. I've seen people who act like old ladies, grandmas and stuff who are clearly millennials by what they say, you know, to me.
Right.
And I'm just like, obviously, that is not a mindset that anybody raised in World War II has, you know?
Yeah. So X-Files did the same thing that you're just talking about. They completely sold out the entire franchise. And, well, not just one episode, but they dedicated one episode to making their position clear. They validated the two-side dialectic, and in this episode, they also made it abundantly clear which side they stand on. The beginning of this season, Russian agents that were contracted by the executive branch tried to kill Mulder and Scully. And that's when I first rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, great, here we go.
It's the original actors, right?
Right, yeah, it's still David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. This not yesterday, but last week's episode is when they really sold themselves out. The present state of affairs and the way that people view conspiracy theorists and the way they react to the word conspiracy kind of put the X-Files in a conundrum, because the premise of the entire show is that there's a government conspiracy to cover up the existence of extraterrestrials, and that a shadow government, a deep state, is the organization behind this government cover-up. And Mulder is investigating conspiracies and fighting against the deep state. Mulder is a conspiracy theorist. The lone gunmen are conspiracy theorists. That language is used throughout the show, but now that the word conspiracy is now associated with alt-right fringe racist. So they run the risk of, if Mulder identifies as a conspiracy theorist, if he says the word conspiracy, that people who are new to the show, they see the show and they think, oh my gosh, this is a racist alt-right show.
Oh, yeah.
So they decided to make everything clear in this episode a week and a half ago. The episode was basically about a guy, I think I told you, Dr. They, you know, because they always say they did this.
No way.
They named this guy
character, Dr. They.
Yeah, Dr. They. And Dr. They is Dr. They was that clip that I played you earlier. That was him speaking in it. But the guy who introduces them to Dr. They is this crazy dude who has had his memories all messed with and believes that he helped start the X-Files. And he's telling Mulder about all these old cases. No, I was there when we did this. I was there when we did that. And in this clip, he's recounting an old case where they finally got to meet the aliens. Here's the clip. It speaks for itself.
Greetings, Earthlings. We have been observing your species for many, what you call, years. Our study is now complete. We no longer wish to have any further contact with you. We are building a wall. It will be a beautiful, albeit invisible, electromagnetic wall that will subatomically incinerate any probes you attempt to send beyond your solar system. You're free to explore Uranus all you want, but we can't allow your kind to infiltrate the rest of the cosmos. You're not sending us your best people. You're bringing drugs. You're bringing crime. You're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people, but we have no choice. Believe me, for although the rest of the galaxies all have their share of these same problems, we fear you could infect us with the one trait that is unique to Earthlings. You lie. Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing.
So Colbert could take some tips from them because it is funny.
That was the X-Files?
Yeah, that was the X-Files. They do these episodes that are dark, and then they'll have kind of a zany episode, and this was
that
the
was
zany.
like almost word for word the inaugural speech of Trump's campaign, right?
Yeah,
or a montage of things he says. The bing,
Yeah.
bing, bing. I hadn't.
Yeah, they used it verbatim. Mulder,
Beautiful, albeit invisible wall. That was pretty funny.
it is. They sell the whole show out because they were trying to make this clear, and they do it throughout the whole episode. Like at one point, Mulder is trying to figure out the conspiracy, and of course, Ted Cruz's picture's on the wall, and he's like, "This idiot's dad was he was involved in the JFK assassination," and then at the end of it, he goes,
"That doesn't stop you from being president. Look at W."
"Oh, exactly."
His dad was in Dallas.
Yeah. At the end of the little rant, Mulder's like, things have gotten so out of control, I just can't keep up with today's conspiracies. And at one point in the episode, Mulder he's like, oh, I just got back from Sasquatch hunting. So what they did in this episode was they defined, here's the type of conspiracy theorist Mulder is. He's not a bad racist. He's not a racist conspiracy theorist like all these crazy people. He's into Sasquatches. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the point is that they were trying to separate him from the modern definition of what a conspiracy theorist has become, because it has taken on this idea of a fringe alt-right type person. They even made fun of the deep state, which is central to the entire premise of the show. They mocked it as though it's not something to take seriously, even though the show has taken it seriously for, 25 years?
The deep state thing where they're act like deep state is Obama holdovers, that is absolutely intended to neutralize the very real deep concept of the deep state. I mean, it's there. It obviously transcends Obama. His mother was in the deep state. His stepfather's in the deep state. His father is in the deep state. He didn't start the deep state.
This entire show is based on the deep state existing, the shadow government. And that's what the entire premise of the show is.
Okay, so here's what I would say. That this stuff like that, I mean, for heaven's sake, Lone Gunman showed the plot for 9/11 6 months before 9/11 in their pilot episode, which was a spinoff of the X-Files.
Yeah.
Right? There's a plane crashing into the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
So, but when I watch stuff like that, Person of Interest, for example, is a show about the machine. Every single computer feeds information. Every camera shot, the thing that hears shotguns, the like microphones, which is a CIA-owned company, by the way. They're putting that sound detectors on the lampposts as well. All that stuff feeds into the machine of this TV show, Person of Interest. It feels like, wow, this is so true. Like that show Black Mirror, which is like the Twilight Zone of today. They show you, they're limited hangouts. So they show you a lot of stuff, but they hold back on the ultimate conclusion. They're never saying Dick Cheney did it and 1,000 people alongside him. They find one rogue guy who they weed out, like they put it all, they just make it manageable, make it feel like the majority of the people are doing the right thing. All those shows are like that, and I assume the Xbox is like that too.
The X-Files. The Xbox.
Sorry, the X-Files. But
the X-Files did this entire episode because, kind of like what we were just talking about, they didn't want people to hear the word conspiracy theorist on that show and think that they were racist and think that they were Trump supporters. That was the entire point of this episode, is to say, here's what side we're on. Don't worry, we're not racist conspiracy theorists.
But it takes the limited hangout back too far. Like, I can't tolerate that. I like the limited hangout stuff. It's interesting to me, as I like science fiction, even though it's total brainwashing and predictive programming. But when they roll it back like that and make him like into Sasquatch, you know what I'm saying? Like, once they make it so simplistic like this, so shallow, it's not satisfying. Like, I think it will, if they continue that way, I think it will fail. But you're saying, am I misunderstanding?
No, here's the thing. It doesn't matter. This is the last season they're doing. So they're doing this retroactively. So if people go back and watch all their old seasons, they go, okay, I wasn't going to watch it before when I thought they believed in the deep state and I thought that they were fringe conspiracy theorists. Now that they clarified it with this episode.
Oh, so this is all an ad for the existing episodes.
Yeah, this is them distancing themselves from the current interpretation of conspiracy theories.
Right, so they're sheep dipping the X-Files.
Yeah, and here's them making fun of the deep state. And this is funny, but still they made a funny episode that completely sold them out. Mulder and Scully are trying to figure out who this crazy dude is, the one who introduced them to Dr. They, and there's these other agents that were following them. So Mulder stops them and asks them what they're doing.
What are you doing here?
You don't know? The legend that I've heard so much about would have already figured out who this guy was you've been talking to, and why we were asked to find out why you are. But I guess that's how things go. You start out a rebel, but then you get fat And the next thing you know, you're deep state. Sad.
Do you know who I am? I'm Fox Mulder. I was fighting the power and breaking conspiracies before you saw your first chemtrail, you punks.
So you start out as a rebel, then you get fat, then before you know it, you're deep state.
Right. Did you catch the Seinfeld reference?
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've used that myself, so I caught it.
When he was on Larry King?
Yes. And Larry asked him if his show was canceled.
Oh, yeah.
That's like when somebody said to me, "Don't believe the conspiracies." My cousin. I looked at him and said, "Do you know who I am?" Anyway.
There's literally episodes of The X-Files of men sitting in a dark room smoking.
Plotting the assassination of...
Yeah, there's a whole episode that covers the assassination of JFK, told from the vantage point of the smoking man, who is the head of the deep state. And this episode aired, 15 years ago. And they show the guy who killed JFK and all. But yeah, in this episode, they're saying, no, we're gonna give a wink and a nod. We don't really believe this stuff. He's not really a fringe conspiracy theorist. He's into Sasquatch. Sasquatch is harmless.
And now he's deep state. They accused him of being deep state.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, it's predictive program. I feel like all the Xbox up to then were
X-Files.
Dang it, because I have Xbox on the mind because I worry about my son playing too much. But anyway, that's another topic. But predictive programming is in this stuff. It gets you ready for these ideas. It makes you kind of feel a little, I think, numb to them so that you don't take action when it's finally revealed. But I was watching a Black Mirror last night or the night before, the one called Waldo. Did you see that one?
That's the one I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. It's a blue cartoon bear that has a foul mouth and runs for election as just a disruptor. He doesn't stand for anything. He just curses at the opponents, makes fun of them, and people love this bear. So yeah. I just discovered Black Mirror, so I really didn't know when it was made or whatever, and I figured it was made last year because this is clearly the Donald Trump character.
That was 2011. I think that was the first season.
It was 2013.
Yeah.
Its release date was 2013, February 2013, which means it was made in 2012. It was not in the first season. But, that was released 5 years ago.
Right, and I think that was commentary on
that's
when people
programming.
wanted Jon Stewart to run.
Well, people wanted Howard Stern to run before that, but it happened. You know what I mean? It happened.
Yeah.
These things are not coincidences, in my opinion. The predictive program, because you got to go back, like L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and who's your guy? Aldous Huxley, Orwell. They're all deep state. They were all connected to military stuff. I think even Robert Heinlein.
Definitely some predictive programming going on with the X-Files. A lot of that is along with predictive programming because it's a popular show. Anything's popular is going to have some elements of that. But they think that their audience, they think that the majority of people believe that. I think
what?
That everybody is on the liberal and they believe that the Russia thing is true 100%. Everybody thinks Trump is a Russian.
The Russian thing on the left. Even when I read the Wall Street Journal and they talk about the S-hole countries, whatever, which they write out, it always takes them several paragraphs, or like that Stormy Daniels thing. It takes them several paragraphs to point out that there is
no
this
evidence.
Stuff is all right. It's all just he said, she said. It's all this ambiguity. But the Russian thing, they're as confident about that as the right was about Hillary's breach of protocol.
Absolutely. And I don't think most of America is like that. I think the media, which is an elite group of people, a small number of people, creates the perception that the majority feels this way about things, and they talk about things in a way as though it's absolutely true. Everybody knows it's true. And that the X-Files and other media outlets do this, or other shows do the same thing, because they believe that part of it's predictive programming. They're trying to create a bigger group of people that believe it, but they also are out of touch with the people that watch their shows. No, I mean, nothing's more.
I like their shows. I'm the one who likes their shows.
Yeah,
you like their shows.
And I see that, and it just makes me roll my eyes.
I told you, my daughter, her position really underneath it all is, even if I'm right, she can't take that heat. She's like, maybe later, Mom, but I just can't.
I want to play you one more example of cultural rot, and then if we have time, I want to play you these other things. I don't know if we'll have time. You might have heard this. Did you see Hillary Clinton's appearance on the Grammys?
No, I couldn't tolerate.
All right. Well, this is the video that they played at the Grammys, except it's only the video, so you don't hear the applause from the audience when she appears. She appears in this video covering her face with the book, as though nobody can tell it's her. Everybody can tell it's her as soon as she's on screen. And
is she wearing a pantsuit?
No, she's sitting down. Okay. But you can hear her voice and you can tell it's her. And then she reveals herself as though it's some big grand reveal. But everybody already knew it was her. I guarantee you she inserted that, because whoever directed that thing would have said, nah, that doesn't work. They wouldn't have let her do it that way, because it totally doesn't work. But I guarantee you her ego, because all these politicians, Trump, all of them, they all have huge egos. She was like, no, I'm going to do a reveal. So I reveal, and then they get this great applause. But everybody knew it was her in the first place. But you get to hear what this sounds like without the audience clapping. So here it is. This was played at the Grammys, where they had Hillary and other celebrities read excerpts from Michael Wolff's book, which Michael Wolff himself admits. Yeah, they read excerpts from the book to the crowd.
Like fictional, right? Basically.
Yeah, he has no sources.
It's all hearsay.
On the second page of the book, he admits that none of it can be verified. But nobody's actually read it except for a handful of people, so everybody just believes what they hear.
Stand by. Take one. He had a long-time fear of being poisoned.
Okay. The book is covering her face.
Definitely Hillary.
Right? The book is covering her face for the first 5 seconds of this.
She probably has the most recognizable female voice in the world.
And she looks like an idiot just reading it. I mean, because it's not like she's actually naturally reading it that way. She's clearly holding it up like she's hiding. And she's reading it. So she just looks stupid.
Stand by. Take one. He had a long-time fear of being poisoned. One reason why he liked to eat at McDonald's. Nobody knew he was coming, and the food was safely pre-made.
That's it. We've got it. That's the one.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
The Grammy's in the bag?
In the bag.
The Grammy's in the bag?
Oh, my gosh.
There was about another minute of that, but it was other celebrities doing it. They did a whole bunch of other auditions for the spoken word version of Michael's book, and all the other people just...
Was there sung versions and poetic versions?
No, it was just Snoop Dogg, and it was rappers. No, they just read it, and then they'd comment on it.
Did you see that Scott Baio thing?
I saw that he was accused, yes.
I just feel like I liked that Scott Baio was not following the script. Maybe he was. Maybe he's there for the dialectic. I figured the Grammys was full of Me Too, was it? Oh, and by the way, how hilarious is it that the Me Too movement is signified by women wearing black to formal events? I mean, that's all they wear. So any woman going to the Grammys or the Oscars or any of that stuff, they're wearing, they're co-opted into the movement. Now, if it was where your, hat, the pink that the hats are made of, nobody wants to wear that. If that was the Me Too color, then it would be saying a statement. But, I had to wear this $5,000 black Givenchy gown because, I'm oppressed.
They picked a color everybody wears. So
you're going to everybody was in the Me Too movement at the Grammys. Because everybody was wearing tuxedos. But Scott Baio fought back and outed the girl who said that he gave her a hard time. Can I tell you one more thing?
Yeah.
Completely unrelated to anything. Can you tolerate that?
Go ahead.
I have 2 totally unrelated things.
All right.
Here you go. I just saw a news story that, Elon Musk, I guess it was, just produced and sold out immediately, 20,000 flamethrowers. Did you see that?
No, where
To
do
symbolize
you
his
sell
like
them to?
SpaceX rocketry, like the consuming public. It comes with a the fire extinguisher.
A
Maybe it was a
flamethrower?
joke. Yes, like what could go wrong?
It's like a real flamethrower.
It's a real flamethrower. It looks like a rocket booster. I'm telling you. I mean, it's so crazy that I feel like I have to double check it real quick.
It's going to be a terrorist attack this weekend with a flamethrower.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's just so, yeah. Elon Musk sold all 20,000 boring flamethrowers, brought in $10 million.
Oh, but they're boring. So
It says boring. The boring company.
This is what you name. If you name it boring, it can't be that threatening.
It's shipped with a complimentary boring fire extinguisher.
It's just a boring flamethrower. It comes with a fire extinguisher?
Yeah. Like, what could go wrong?
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's a way to bring down hardcore regulations on cigarette lighters, stuff like we're not, you know what I mean? Like, why would you do that? That's just stupid.
All right, let me light your cigarette. Stand back. I'm going to use a flamethrower.
No, it's going to go bad. And then I wanted to say one other thing that was in the news this week. Did you know the story of how, like, Assistant Deputy Director of the FBI, McCabe, who I guess is the husband of Terry McAuliffe, who was like a Democrat. You know the whole story of McCabe.
Yeah.
Stepped down from the FBI or was pushed out or whatever, right? This was in the news. Are you familiar with the story?
Yes.
You aware of the story? What do you think the story is in one sentence? This week's story.
He stepped down. He was about to retire, I think, right? And then he stepped down for some reason, but now they're saying that Trump pressured him out.
Right. So he's eligible for retirement in March. And of course, if you keep working after you're eligible for retirement, you're working for free.
Yeah.
Or a discount. If you can get half pay and you keep working, you don't do that. You take the half pay and you get another job. And he had a bunch of accrued vacation time. So he takes his retirement date, he minuses his vacation time, and today is when he would basically step down. So he did. And then they just make it into this huge story, which to me is like totally just an opportunity. It's that what to watch out for, I hashtagged, of going out in a blaze of glory is the new golden parachute or, walking off into the sunset. They just made this massive scandal over McCabe when he absolutely positively would have stepped down on that day, no matter what. Everybody would have. Yeah. You know what I mean? You take your retirement date, you minus your vacation pay, then that's your last day of work.
Yeah.
But it was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal that this guy is, we don't know why. And it's like, well, yes, we do. It's in the second paragraph of your article. You know what I mean? It's just so weird. And I'm just pointing out how stupid these stories are getting. Like it's all gossip. And this stuff is on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, which is supposed to be the serious newspaper.
I know. Even the serious ones are absurd.
Absurd.
All right. I have to do this because I teased it at the beginning. The Stormy Daniels thing, after the speech, not last night, whenever the speech was, Tuesday, that night, after the State of the Union speech, Stormy Daniels was on Jimmy Kimmel's show. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, she reveals nothing. And he sits there silently when he asks questions again, and he fills in the blanks. I'm going to play these really quick, and I'll give you the context as I play them. This is her intro. This is Jimmy Kimmel introing her, and I'm going to tell you there's going to be the obvious reason why this is strange, but I'm going to tell you why it's even more strange, his introduction, after I play the clip.
She's an actor and director who either did or did not receive $130,000 to be or not be here tonight. Please welcome Stormy Daniels.
Okay, she's an actor and director. No, she's a porn star, okay? She's a porn star who the only reason she's being interviewed by Jimmy Kimmel is because she is currently going on a nationwide tour called, get ready, Make America Horny Again. That's the only reason she was on the show.
Oh my gosh. So what's her motivation for playing along with all this? Oh my God. The content is the commercial, man.
An actress, director, and a world-renowned nun, Stormy Daniels. What a bunch of bull.
Can I please interject a little tiny little personal experience? When I used to live in a like near Universal Studios in LA. It's a tiny little place called Toluca Lake. It was near Burbank. A lot of like movie stars live there and everything. And when I went to I used to go to a big grocery store far away, but one time I went to the smaller one closer to my house, and it was so crazy. There were chicks getting out of like metallic blue Lamborghinis and, you know, on the phone doing deals with like looking like Pamela Anderson with like the double D's, you know, just crazy. It was like such a weird experience. And I called my husband. I was like, what is going on at the Ralph's or whatever it was, like on near Universal? He's like, oh, that's the porn Ralph's. It's like, you know how in Atlanta there's the, you know, disco Ralph's, like there are different, or whatever it is, there's one of the grocery stores, like there's a different, they're little like catchphrases to tell you which grocery store you're at. But this was the porn one. And then of course it made total sense to me. And then by coincidence, or at the same time, my husband was Googling, I guess there's a like sex offender database. You can look at like where you're buying your new house or whatever to see if there's any registered sex offenders in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
So on our street, this was near the porn Ralph's, was a business registered under the name of Porn Jihad on my street. But I think they kept themselves, you know, they weren't prowling around kidnapping small children, as far as I could tell.
You don't want to buy that house after they've owned it. That's for sure.
I don't know. You don't know where they were. The jihad thing had me a little more worried than the porn thing, but
yeah, that's an interesting combination for sure.
But actually, my point, I a little bit have a point in that they are actually wheeler dealers. You know what I mean? They're business people.
Absolutely. That's my point in playing these clips, is to show that this is all, she's conning people. This is like, and I don't believe any of it.
Yeah, and they're real actors. They're like actors in their interactions. They're actors. You know what I mean? Like they're actors all the time because they go to parties and stuff and they act like they like you. You know?
Right. That's true. We got a few minutes left. Let me get these clips. This is Jimmy Kimmel. Earlier that day, before this, this was her lawyer that did this, published a letter. And he's going to read the letter, and then he's going to try and call its authenticity into question, even though her lawyer published it.
I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to ask you tonight, but then about like 3 hours ago, I go on the internet and I see this letter that pops up. It says, official statement of Stormy Daniels, to whom it may concern. Over the past few weeks, I've been asked countless times to comment on reports of an alleged sexual relationship I had with Donald Trump many, many, many years ago. The fact of the matter is that each party to this alleged affair denied its existence in 2006, 2011, 2016, 2017, now again in 2018. I am not denying this affair because I was paid hush money, as has been reported in overseas-owned tabloids, the Wall Street Journal. I am denying this affair because it never happened. I will have no further comment on this matter. Please feel free to check me out on Instagram at @TheStormyDaniels. The signature on the original statement does not match the signature on this statement. And I went through my library of photographs of you to compare it to headshots that you have signed. And these seem to match the original statement. And am I getting at anything? Did you sign this letter that was released today?
I don't know. Did I?
Wait a minute. That you can say,
that does
right?
not look like my signature, does it?
It doesn't look like your signature. So you're saying perhaps this letter was written and released without your approval.
No way.
No, it's interesting because it does make you want to look at the signatures, and he's right. This letter was released by her lawyer. The signature on that letter doesn't look like the signature on the previous letter, but you know what he didn't read?
What?
The previous letter, which says almost the exact same thing verbatim.
Yeah, that's what they do. That was the story behind supposedly the White House actually publishing a digitally altered birth certificate of Obama.
Well, what I'm saying here is
to make the other side crazy.
Right. She admitted in the letter that he's saying is her signature, she denies the whole thing and almost using the exact same language as that letter. So she's denied it in a letter that has her signature on it. But he
But
didn't
is she?
read that one.
She didn't say she signed either of them. Like,
No, she didn't say.
said
She doesn't do
nothing.
any of that.
So
right.
it doesn't mean anything to me.
And he goes on to clarify that. He says, the reason you can't say this is because you do or do not have a non-disclosure agreement. If you didn't have a non-disclosure agreement, of course you could tell us that, right? And she goes, "You're very smart, Jimmy." But here's the problem with that. Here's the problem.
That's what she said. She's very smart.
Yeah. Here's the problem with that whole non-disclosure agreement thing. You're telling me these liberals can raise $30 million for John Ossoff, but they can't raise $200,000 to say, "Hey, we'll pay your fines if you just violate the non-disclosure." Not only that, because that happened in that Olympic skater case, is people paid for people to violate their non-disclosure agreements so that they didn't have to worry.
So it's simply a fee and there's no actual penalty?
No, you're not going to go to jail. And anyway, even if they were to sue her, that would be admitting that there was a non-disclosure agreement. So she could come out and say that there is one, and she's not going to get sued because that would mean the president would have to admit that it existed. So that's not going to happen. Third, the reason this is BS is if she's going around and letting all these people imply that there is a non-disclosure agreement and that she did sleep with him, she's already in violation of a non-disclosure agreement.
I don't know about that.
I read some stuff on it. I read what a lot of lawyers had to say about it, and they said that she's already in violation of it if there's one that exists. If you're letting people say, "Oh, this happened and that happened," and your friends
it stands to reason. It's that she should not be able to get cute like that.
Right. This is my favorite clip in the whole thing. Just she is telling Jimmy what she regrets about this whole situation.
My daughter and stuff has been exposed to things that,
that you
like
don't
I
want
said,
her.
Like I said, they're just making up random things on the internet. Like, if my daughter was old enough to read the internet, which she's not, she would have found out today that her mom is actually her dad.
Oh, that's the worst thing that she would have found out on the internet about her mom.
How about the true stuff?
Yeah, she's not as concerned with her daughter finding out about the gangbangs.
Yeah, she's admitted to her actual profession. It's the true thing that's a threat. You know what I mean? This is what's so ridiculous about this fake news stuff. Like false stories kill. It's not the false stories that cause problems. It's the true stories. And that's why they want to shut them up.
You're right.
That's why, I mean, I didn't know much about Gawker, but Corey, a listener, said, he points out right away that Gawker, as much as you want to call it a tabloid and stuff, it came up with it was pretty bold, and they shut it down one way or another.
Yeah, we can end on this. This is where this Jimmy Kimmel interview devolved to. And part of this, Jimmy Kimmel, so that he can protect her from her non-disclosure, he pulls out two puppets. One of them is a Donald Trump puppet, and the other one is a Stormy Daniels puppet. The Donald Trump puppet is wearing just underwear.
That's so disrespectful of anyone.
No, listen to the things he says
and
to
the
her.
president, come on.
Hey, Stormy, I'm not asking you to say anything about anything, but I got 3 carrots here. Would you like to pick a carrot?
3 carrots, one big, one small, one medium. And they had just played Trump's comment about his big or small hands during the debate.
Oh, and carrots are orange.
Yeah, and he's asking what Trump's penis size is what he's doing with the carrots.
Right. Oh, okay. So pick the one. Like, this is what they do to little children. When they interview them about being sexually abused.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they give them dolls and they have them just.
That's what he's doing.
See what they do.
Yeah, so he's trying to find out
awful.
the president's penis size.
Oh.
Hey, Stormy, I'm not asking you to say anything about anything, but I got 3 carrots here. Would you like to pick a carrot?
Yeah, I'm used to the sparkly kind of carrots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you pick a carrot, you might get some of that stuff.
Oh, you sweet talker.
No carrot? You don't want a carrot?
Who wants a carrot?
Does this at all seem familiar to you? Tidy-whities? Have you ever made love to anyone whose name rhymes with Lonald Lump?
Yeah, I'll call you whatever you want me to call you, baby.
She's making a lot of money off of it, that's for sure.
She's doing a great job.
Yeah, she is, because she knows that anybody is ready to take seriously any ridiculous claim.
She's on Jimmy Kimmel and she says nothing. She's like Teller.
Yeah,
like
you're
Penn and
right.
Teller.
Jimmy Kimmel just said everything. He's Penn, yeah.
But it's like Teller going on tour without Penn. You know?
Yeah,
she's been
you're
on
right.
all these shows and she doesn't actually have.
Well, everybody acts as Penn for her. And she didn't even have to promote herself. Kimmel promoted her when he read that letter, and he said, at Stormy Daniels, her Instagram, which you go to her Instagram,
Yes.
she's
That was definitely not in the letter.
Well, I think we're about out of time for today. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everyone who listened. Make sure and go to propagandareportdaily.com and subscribe. Click on the iTunes button or the Android button. If you want to support the show, you can click on the PayPal link or go to Patreon, become a Patreon. We appreciate everybody who is supporting the show, who has supported it in the past.
That's
Thank
why.
you very much.
Do you remember, Binkley? That's why we started to make sure that we absolutely always did a podcast every single week.
Yes.
When people started contributing to Patreon, because I feel like we owe them.
Well, it keeps us accountable and definitely motivates us. And thank you very much. Anybody else who wants to do that, the links are all on the website. Go to iTunes, rate us. It helps us show up higher in the search engine rankings. And thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Later.